Hello there, this is a second version of a video I made in 2021 about the lift renovations at Weardale Ski Club, and I've just decided to re-record it because the audio in that live version was not very good, and so here we go. So in 2021 we at Weardale Ski Club decided that we needed to renovate the two ski tows, and just decided that was the year to do it. And it had many issues, so there was dodgy bearings on the upper lift ball wheel, so we call the upper lift the F2, and we actually fixed that in 2020, but in many ways it was that initial fix that caused us to do a load more work. There was also a twist on the F2 rope which needed to be sorted out. There were button hittings, the buttons and the spring boxes were hitting platforms on F2, which is ironic because we put the platforms up there to make life easier. Both ball wheels on F2, both the drive and the return, were very rusty, and so we had to deal with them because otherwise we'd have to replace them. The ball wheels on F1, however, were different because they were made out of aluminum with a steel rim, and the F2 ball wheels are made out of mild steel. The superstructure on F1 return in particular, and some parts of the F2 return were very rusty and they needed to be looked at before the material was compromised. And then just generally speaking, the paint was rendered useless on both drive stations and three pylons on the F1 toe, which is the lower toe, but just because the paint wasn't very good. Rust had damaged the F2 guards around drive shafts and drive belts, and also a little bit on the F1, but eventually we ended up redoing both sets of guards. We had bad rubber liners or bad sheave liners on all sorts of the sheaves, all sorts of the wheels there that needed to be replaced. There was dilapidated fencing around the F2 drive station, and gradually there was a few other issues we discovered as well, but like we had some rusting gusset plates on the F1 pylons. So continuing, why do all this work on the ski tows at Weardale? Well, the current cost of replacing each toe, and that's the cost of buying it from Doppelmayr and installing it ourselves over here, is upwards of £740,000 at this current moment in time, and that's according to my own estimates and educated guess from Innes Lothian, and they were both the same. We hit the same number, which says something, doesn't it? And then the current lifts there, structurally, they could become structurally compromised by rust in the future, and with 3.5 tons of tensile stress on each toe, then it's really crucial that we keep the lifts both operable and safe for our visitors. We didn't believe the application of Hammerite paint was effective, and more modern two-part epoxy formulas were obviously more durable. And I don't wish the ski club to pay for new ball wheels or superstructure elements in the future because, again, they have to be custom made and they're quite costly. Also, to reduce the possibility of breakdowns and failures in the upcoming season at Weardale, where it'll be more crucial than ever for the lifts to run smoothly. And of course we're talking about the ongoing COVID pandemic and how that's affected people skiing. At the time of speaking, on the 23rd of February 2022, they've only actually managed to do about 4 or 5 days of skiing at Ray's site, Weardale. It's not been particularly good, which is a real shame. And it was a win-win for me to renovate the lifts and to gain experience at the same time. Now the next slide here is a photo of the top station of the Warren's T-Bar at Nevis Range in Scotland, which is pretty much where I am at the moment. And the issue with this lift is that it's from the 1960s. It was brought over to Scotland as part of the Phase 2 plan of development at Nevis Range, and it was installed there around 98, 97, and they just haven't looked after it. like at all, and as a result, basically apart from the drive station, the thing is knackered. The rust is really bad, and from the photo you can probably tell that it's a right rust bucket, and we just can't allow our lift to get like that. The one good thing about the lifts at Weardale is that thankfully the return station is significantly simpler than that design. Obviously that design has latticing framework. The trolley slides on that, and it has basically an extra 4 wheels for the tensioning system, which the lift at Weardale doesn't have. So while the same rough form factor continues with the EO station that we have at Weardale, it's a lot easier to look after. Anyway, before renovation, it kind of looked like this. I mean, aesthetically it looked terrible, but more to the point, there was a lot of other things going on which the average skier wouldn't see, which needs to be looked after. And one of them was the bearings in the ball wheels and the pitting in the steel. So we have some more photos here, and looking at the paint that's degrading. The tow hangers were getting quite rusty as well on the arms. We'd got bits of snow fencing that were falling over, which was always a bit of a nuisance, and that didn't catch snow anyway. And then during renovation we applied a coat of 2-part epoxy primer. We were looking at all sorts of different stuff to start with, like Amalok 2, and then we ended up with Bondon 115 instead. Pretty much the same thing, and so after an awful lot of grinding away rust and chip paint with wire brushes, grinding discs, you name it, we managed to get back to either bare steel or just something we could paint onto, and so we plastered the whole lot with this epoxy primer. Really thick stuff, it was thick, and in the bottom right photo there you can see that we're taking down the ball wheel from the drive and lifting that off the transfer box, and that was interesting getting it off there, but thankfully we have that I-beam to help with that operation. But later on you've got more photos of us de-rusting and a lot of climbing. I got so knackered doing all that climbing, we're looking at least 40 days of working up there in all conditions, including the bottom left where it was a foul day. There was fire involved. Then also we got all the spring boxes. There were a few of them that were broken, so we took them apart and looked at them. There's some work there to do with the counterweight wheels we had to look at. The bottom right you can see that the ball wheel on the F2 drive has been put back in place, and that was a good opportunity to get that whole area around that ball wheel de-rusted and sorted out, which is why that bit's green. And at the top right there you can see our work party coordinator and field master, let's call him a field master, Steve Lurd, with one of the old ball wheels that got sent away for shot blasting, priming and painting, and some re-welding as well. The tabs that you can see spanning out from the main disc onto kind of the guides, they were rusting out, so they got replaced. There's a video here which I'll let you see, and then I'll be back. So a few more, getting close to the finish of the renovation here, and it's a bit of the bull wheel being carried up, all of the nicely newly painted, re-oiled, serviced spring boxes and hangers. Some of those orange plastic stems need to be replaced. The UV gets to them and it breaks down the plastic, and then they crack, which is a shame. And we put some more like spacers up in the ceiling to be able to hang them, because they were really close together before. It was hard to get to the ones at the back. The ball wheels came back and they were still pitted, but the most important thing was they were completely rust free. So hopefully we'll get out of those two ball wheels another 20 to 30 years worth of life out of them, if not more. And you've then got the photo there on the right of the F2 drive without the guards back on, all looking nice and shiny. The snow fencing repaired and new backboards put in for people to ski up against, which go up quite high if you notice. They just so that if the snow's quite high, they won't get buried. Here's the tensioning station for the F1, which was in a terrible condition before we got started, and here it is looking really nice, both aesthetically, working well, everything greased. The trolley slides back and forth easily. I think we ended up replacing. Did we end up? Yeah, I think we did some work to one set of the sheaves, one of the sheave assemblies up there as well. Looking again at the F2 drive at the bottom left from a distance. And at the bottom left there in this slide, there's the F1 drive station. Again, without its guards refitted. So the engine, which is the diesel Lister engines, which sit in the huts, and the output of them high speed is outputted via the shaft that you can see, and then up multiple belts, and then up to the wheel. The middle photo shows one of the pylons looking nice and green. Bizarrely, we chose green because we thought it would help make them not stand out in the green landscape, and yet make them stand out in the winter, so that people don't ski into them accidentally, which might happen if you're working with beginners. But ironically, green stood out quite a lot during the summer months, and a sort of greyish brown might have been a better choice of colour. You can, however, see that it's not quite finished. The gusset plates at the top have been left unpainted, and that's because they need to be replaced and new ones welded on in the summer of 2022, which we're going to be getting to soon. And there you can also see the photo of all the paint we got through and all the gloves. I'm sure there's loads more that ended up in the skip, but that was just some of it. More photos there. Snow fencing that's been replaced. Trying to get fencing to stay upright in Weardale with all the wind can be tricky, but it works. And the snow fencing at the middle bottom photo there is doing really well, mainly because the size of the posts and the way that they're alternating from one side of the fence to the other really seems to help. And then, as you can see, we put up a memorial plaque on both lifts, so that was just nice to finish it off. Those signs came out a lot bigger than I was expecting when I ordered them from the printers. Yeah. So there we are. Summary of remedies. The bearings were replaced on the F2 ball wheel in 2020 in November. Sheaves on F2 adjusted to reduce twist on the haul rope, so we found that was the remedy, was that basically sheaves weren't aligned properly, and that was causing some twist. Platforms on F2 were lowered to the correct height, because essentially they were just put at the wrong height. We didn't realise that, but it was to do with the fact that some of the pylons are higher than others. So we put all the pylons the same height from the top, not realising that they were all at different heights. Both ball wheels on F2 were shot blasted, primed and painted with 2-part epoxy by Specialist Blastings and Coatings, and they were help. We got a lot of help from this guy called Innes Lothian from Lothian Ski Services Limited. And I think it's Blakegowie he's come from, so it was a fair journey for him. But he knows what he's doing, and he just provided that extra level of support and tools that we just felt we needed. All rusting metal and compromised paint were removed. And a lot of work doing that. I think we spent almost as much time grinding off all the old paint as we did applying 2 coats of new paint. All that, lots and lots of technical coatings there. I mean, in total, in terms of the amount of paint, I put £1,000 on this slide. We're looking at more like 2,000, so I was way off. And in terms of the volume, well, we got through 5 cans of each. So basically about 55 litres worth of, well, in total with the ball wheels, is 60 litres of technical coatings, which is quite a lot really. Because you're not painting walls, you're just painting small metal surfaces, so it really went on thick, that technical coating. I keep wanting to say paint, it's technical coating. Then obviously the guards are re-welded, all sorts of work done on them. Stainless steel hardware which won't rust out. But the guards probably need to be rebuilt in about 5 years. They were pretty rough really. Fencing repairs done. Lots of things that I haven't mentioned before, but yeah, lots of crap, both drive stations, so we've relocated that or got rid of it, because, I don't know, it's just one of those gathering places for stuff to accumulate. Loads of new sheave liners installed. All of the spring boxes and hangers basically renovated and given it a bit of a good going over. Commemorative plaques were done. It says 870 hours of labour there, but I think at the time of speaking, because we did more after this presentation was done, I think that we're getting closer now to about 930 hours of labour to finish them off. And there was also another plaque that we did for the bottom, for the like a welcome sign. Nothing to do with the lifts, but while we're ordering signs, we felt like that was a good thing. And we also put number plates on all the pylons, so that if it's foggy and there's an error with one of them, we can track which pylon it was that was at fault and where a rope might have derailed or a sensor's gone bad. Speaking of which, the electrical system on the tow is in really good condition. It rarely fails. It works really well. I mean, it's using the braking bar or brittle bar system. Weardale, some of them call it tuning forks, and they're basically just a U-shaped section of metal, and if the rope hits it, it snaps off, breaks the circuit, and the lift comes to a halt. And there are also cable catchers as well, so if the rope ever derails, it just hits the cable catcher and stops it falling to the ground, which is really useful. One thing to know is the lifts here, they don't have any lifting frames. So you've got the pylon stem, and then you've got the cross arm, and the cross arm holds the sheave assemblies which hold the sheaves. And above the cross arm on a lot of modern lifts, certainly chairlifts, you'll get something called the lifting frame. It's a structure of metal, and it's designed there basically so that if the lift derails, you've got something to pull up against. You can put a chain hoist on it, or turfer, and lift a haul rope back up. Also useful for servicing, for access, safety, for rigging your harness to it. All sorts of uses. I mean, hell, I've seen people use them to put floodlights on and loudspeakers, so very useful. And we don't have that. Instead, what we have at Weardale is 2 temporary mobile lifting frames, which we can just clamp on to any tower that we want, and they get moved around. Anyway, that's the end of this presentation. Thank you for listening. And at the very start, we had a period of very strong hail here, so I had to stop the recording and start it again. So I'm glad I got it all done in one shot now. All right, thank you for watching, and please subscribe if you're interested in this kind of content. Thank you.
Apparently. So, Steve Lum, would you like to come up onto stage? Because I've got a bit of a gift for you. Is he still there? He is still there. He's hiding. I'm going to have to swap microphones as well. Because I have a microphone over here as well, because I'm prepared. Remember that Scout's motto. So this is Steve Lum, the chairman of the club, and he's been very decent. Let's move towards the camera and the light. And he's been very decent in just supporting me and giving me good words of advice, along with his co-colleague, Steve Lurd. Apparently I've attended almost every work meet so far.
Just about. I think you've been to probably more than me this year, the last 2 years.
And of course it's a bit more of a drive for me, so I end up staying at a friend's house in her garden in a tent, so I can save on fuel.
Do you have free-range chickens there?
Anyway, there's not really much for Steve to say other than thank you, but I've got a bit of a thank you for him, because being at Weardale, it means that I've been able to progress my skill set somewhat. So presenting to the Weardale Ski Club, if these will come out right, would you mind holding that? They argued about these, but they didn't realise that I was giving these to the ski club as a gift. So, in recognition of the fact that I've worked there a lot, we created a bit of a welcome sign, which is in 2 parts, because the printer couldn't make one big enough for me, apparently. And then, while we've been there, we've basically, I've sort of, would you say I've championed the idea of renovating the 2 ski lifts? So we created these placards to be put onto the thing. There's a load more as well, by the way, but I haven't brought them with me. So I'm going to leave him there, holding all these signs.
They should at least retain the snow.
He says they at least retain the snow. So yeah, I think the idea is that I'm trying to finish off the project there well, make my mark on the place, and introduce my sense of aesthetical qualities in terms of making the place look nice. Any other words?
Well, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Jonathan. He's been, you probably all know Jonathan a lot better than I do, but the last 2 years he's brought his unending enthusiasm over to Weardale. The hardest part has been trying to calm him down and try to curb his enthusiasm a little bit, which I think we've done, but he's been a driving force behind the renovation we've done at Weardale Ski Club on particularly the upper lift, which has been fantastic. I hope you've got a few photos to show later.
I've got a bark of approval back there.
The one thing I would say, if you ever get Jonathan to do any work for you, if it involves paint, order double the amount of paint you need, because he usually goes home with more than half a load of paint on his body and his face.
Well, I think John West knows about that, doesn't he? Yeah. Right, well...
Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Another bark of approval from Poppy at the back.